it again. These are on YouTube now, it's easy to go to, just punch it in and I'm there. That look good?
Yeah, I think you're good.
And just check, see,
Just don't stand on your tiptoes.
so I'm right at the border.
You got a little gap
So
there.
6'1", so don't go to 6'2". All right, okay, today we finished Genesis, and not just Genesis part 3, we finished the entire book of Genesis we've read through. So in this class so far, we've read Revelation, the whole book, Daniel, all 4 of the Gospels, Acts, and now this completes Genesis. And now we're really going to get a topic, cover a lot of books coming up next. We'll tell that at the end of the lesson. But let's close out here. Why do we have 32 and 36? Just a refresher. Our first Genesis, remember we did the first 11 books of the Bible. That was a few years back, a couple years ago. And then last summer we did Joseph. And mainly Joseph's story starts at chapter 37. But halfway through, we went back to chapters 34 and 35 and talked about how bad Simeon and Levi were and how it all was about the brothers. So we'll recap that briefly today. That's why we're skipping over 34 and 35 because they're already done. So we're going to do Jacob, reconciling with Esau, and then just briefly read Esau's descendants and what happened to him in chapter 36. And then we'll wrap up this 3-part series on Genesis today. All right, so last week, Jacob finally broke away from his father-in-law Laban after working with him 20 years. There was some controversy there. Jacob had, done some deceiving in his early years. Laban had done some deceiving to him. Jacob had now had accumulated quite much, saying he snuck out, left. Laban went out, confronted him. They reconciled, made peace with each other, and Jacob continues to progress back home. All right, now he's got one more issue to deal with, his brother Esau. Remember 20 years ago, he deceived him out of his birthright, and Esau said, as soon as our father dies, I'm going to kill you. So Isaac is still living at this point, so he has that in his favor, but he knows whether or not this was a plan of God. Jacob went about the wrong way doing it, and he's got to make things right with Esau. So he's setting things up, and remember the night before is when he wrestled with the angel. So now Jacob, the one who runs from troubles, can't run anymore, even physically, because the Lord has touched his hip, and Jacob will walk with this limp for the rest of his life. So let's go to Genesis 33, verses 1 to 3. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children unto Leah, and unto Rachel, and unto the 200 unto the 2 handmaids. And he put the handmaids and their children foremost. So he put, we'll talk about this here a second. First he put Zilpah and Bilhah, and the 2 children that they each had, they were first. And Leah and her children. Next was Leah and her 6 sons that she had, and daughter. And after Rachel and Joseph hindermost. So in the back, Rachel and Joseph, probably a baby here, hindermost. And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. So a couple things here, all right. Jacob, here's Esau's coming with 400 men. So I know he's thinking, oh Lord, this is it. He's going to wipe me out and make good on his promises. Either that or carry away all my wife and children. And just note the order that he puts his children. All right, the enemy's coming. And what does he do? He puts his concubine's children first, his wife Leah's children next, and then his favorite Rachel and his favorite Joseph in the back. Now Joseph's a baby here. His brothers are probably in the range from probably 4 or 5 to 13. And I can't help but think this is one of the first seeds that planted in their mind. He thinks it's better. He put us in front of him. He's saying he'd rather Esau. In other words, if he can get to every one of them, I'm going to protect Joseph the most. And I'm sure that set the seed or planted the seed of early resentment of the brothers of Joseph. And of course, a few years later, he got the coat of many colors, and then a couple of events that sealed the deal, which we'd already covered. But I can't help but think, that was an early seed planted itself. He's all set, and here comes Esau. Hasn't seen him now in 20 years. The last memory they have is Jacob stealing Isaac's birthright, Esau threatening him, and Rebekah and Isaac telling him, you're better off to go get out of here for a while and flee to my brother Laban. Verses 4 to 11. And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, who are those with thee? And he said, the children which God hath graciously given thy servant. Then the handmaidens came near, they and their children, and they bowed themselves. And Leah also with her children came near and bowed themselves. And after came Joseph near and Rachel, and they bowed themselves. And he said, what meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, these are to find grace in thy sight of my Lord. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother, keep that thou hast thyself. And Jacob said, nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand, for therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged him, and he took it. All right, several things to look at here. First of all, imagine the relief of Jacob. For probably the last 2 decades, whenever he heard a noise at night, maybe he said, is Esau tracked me down? Is he to come get me? And he's seen that Esau has forgiven him. All right, the first part of Esau's life, there isn't many positive things, but this is the last thing we really hear about him. And it's good to know that he kind of ended on a good note, because even though the Lord chose to Jacob for his line, Esau did act right in forgiveness, and it was good, and they're reconciled. And you also can see some foreshadowing here. As Jacob and his brother Esau had a riff, they meet each other, they hug, they forgive. Esau forgive Jacob what he'd done to him. And in a few decades down the road, Jacob is going to have a son, Joseph, whose brothers are going to do a whole lot worse to him than what Jacob did to Esau, and Joseph will weep and cry and hug each other and forgive each other. So it's kind of foreshadowing the event. They reconcile, and also all of Jacob's wives and children bow down to Esau, kind of showing, because all of Joseph's brothers bowed down to him. So they kind of repeat that cycle there. Now he's somewhat surprised when he last saw Jacob. He was becoming an old bachelor. Now he's got 4 wives, you might as well say, and 12 kids. So he was saying, well, see, we'll sometimes see somebody, haven't seen in a while, they've got 3 or 4 kids. We'll see what you've been doing the last few years. We'll see what Jacob's been doing. But not only has he accumulated a family, children, he's got an abundance of flocks and herds, of which he's going to give a huge portion to Esau, and let's admit, he does owe it to him. So a couple of other things to say. First of all, Esau refuses because he says, I have plenty. So that's good to hear. And Esau, even though he did not get the birthright and blessing, he is a descendant of Abraham, and it appears to have inherited Abraham's blessing, and Esau seems to be blessed as well. But Jacob insists, please take it. I owe this to you. So Jacob is not saying, not only have they apologized and reconciled, I want to give you something, to in a small way, give back what it did. So it's really a very good, strong ending between Jacob and Esau. It's good for brothers to reconcile. All right. So that's done. I'm sure that's a great burden off Jacob's back. He's got the Laban situation taken care of. He's got the Esau situation taken care of. Now he's got a full family. And the Lord is, it's like saying, it's time to continue with my plans for this family, for my great plan of salvation. All right, so Esau makes an offer to Jacob, verses 12 to 14. And he said, let us take our journey, and let us go, and I will go before thee. And he said unto him, my Lord knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and herds with young are with me. And if men should overdrive them one day, all the flock will die. Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, And I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure until I come unto my Lord, unto Seir. Now they've reconciled. Esau offers to stay because he's brought 400 men with him and provide additional protection for Jacob as he travels home. Because they are out there in the wilderness. There's no law and order back in those days. So Esau's offering kind of like to provide an escort and extra protection. But Jacob insists, I've got a lot of flocks and herds here. I'd rather go at a slower pace and take it, my way. So I appreciate it, but thanks anyway. And then, it's almost as if to say, I can't help but wonder, is Jacob maybe a little suspicious? Like, look, I'm going to push it too far. We've reconciled. I've given him back for some of the stuff to take away from him. No need to, to keep it going. Let's move our different directions. So 15 through 17, I want to read here. And it talks about something that Jacob celebrated that will foreshadow future feast. And Esau said, let me now leave with thee some of the folk that are with me. And he said, what needeth it? Let me find grace in thy sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day in his way into Seir, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore the name of that place is called Succoth. Again, Esau offers help. Maybe deep down, like I said, Jacob probably said, we've made up, let's move on and go our separate ways. And they set up camp in Succoth, which means booths. And in a few hundred years, one of Jacob's descendants by the name of Moses, will go up into the mountain, receive the law, and the Lord will establish 7 feasts. There's a Passover, first fruits, and unleavened bread in the spring, Pentecost in May, and then there's the 3 fall feasts, Day of Atonement, I'm forgetting the next one, and then the last one is the Feast of Booths, where all the children of Israel celebrate. They create like little teeny like tents or booths to commemorate their wandering in the wilderness. So this again, we have some more foreshadowing of the Feast of Israel that will be set up in the near future. And then finally, this chapter closes out. Jacob goes to Shechem, verses 18 to 20. And Jacob came to Shechem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, which he came from Padan-aram, and pitched his tent before the city. So now he's back in Canaan land. And he bought a parcel of field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And he erected there an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. All right, so Jacob is about to set up camp. He buys lands from Hamor, which we'll cover here in this summary briefly. And he sets up, looks like he's going to stay here for a while. So Jacob has 4 wives. We know 2 wives or 2 concubines. He's got a daughter, 11 sons, a 12th and final son on the way, as we'll find out that Rachel is pregnant again. So as I said at the beginning of this lesson, we had covered chapters 34 to 35 back when we did Joseph last summer. So just what I'm going to do, just going to summarize the events in these here. I took my lesson that I had last year and just the main points, and I'm just going to go over them. So in 34, first 7 verses, we know Dinah is raped, rape is rape, I guess, but some are worse than others. In this case, the man seemed to love her and wanted to marry her, was willing to be circumcised for her. So in a sense, it wasn't the worst situation. So that's their only daughter of Jacob. So the boy who had done this, his father Hamor, he attempts to reconcile, goes to Jacob and said, look, I'm sorry for what my son did. He wants to marry her, which is what later on Moses, even provided an option in the law. And if you just, let them come together and we'll marry each other. So Jacob seems to agree with this. And then his sons Levi and Simeon deceive. They say, okay, but you have to you have to accept our custom of circumcision, it's not just, a little blood covenant. That's a major thing for Hamar's family to do. But in his desire for the girl, and the family's like, okay, we agree to do this, we will accept your custom of circumcision. Your children will marry our children will marry your children, we'll live together. Now, once again, that wasn't God's plan. God's plan was not for him to mingle with the Canaanites, but Levi and Simeon go about it the wrong way. They carry out this act, they know, because all the men of the city now are I think it said it's day 2 or 3 when it's the fever's at the worst, so they're basically helpless, and they go in and just take out this, it wasn't a whole group of people, but even just 2 or 3 men, if you're against 50 or 60 men who are basically helpless, it's no problem taking the city down. That's what they did. They completely destroyed the city. And of course, Jacob was furious after this. He said, "You've made my name a reproach." And it really never shows that Simeon and Levi really showed remorse, at least at the time. See if I can go to the last verse of chapter 34. After Jacob chews them out. Well, let's leave the last couple of verses. 30 and 31 from chapter 34. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have troubled me to make them stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house." And what's the response? And they said, "Should he deal with our sister as with a harlot? So they show no remorse of killing and destroying that city." So as a result of this, Jacob has to get out of the territory. It talks about, even though he's extremely outnumbered, the Lord puts the fear of God into those people, so they're not going to bother Jacob and his family, but still he has to move. I also realized something is what was wrong last week. So Jacob removes the foreign gods, and then we get into chapter 35. Last week I talked about maybe he didn't even know that Rachel had taken those gods from her father Laban, but he knew by now, so he gets rid of those, basically saying he's rededicating his life and his service to the Lord. So he begins his journey, and it talks about the Lord will protect them as we go into chapter 35, and the Lord again appears to Jacob in verses 9 through 15. Let's just summarize what the Lord said. Verse 10, chapter 35. God said unto him, "Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name." And he called his name Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins," which happens. "And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac to thee, I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land." And God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake with him Bethel. So the Lord makes a promise to him. Now on the journey, as a result of them having to move, Rachel dies, giving birth to Jacob's 12th and last son, Benjamin, which will cause great grief to Jacob. We talk again, about Joseph and the resentment, maybe them thinking, how Joseph was given preferential treatment when they were about to be confronted by Esau. Maybe Jacob is thinking, because of my sons, Simeon and Levi, because of their act of rebellion, because I had to get up and move, this put extra stress on Rachel, causing her to die. And he maybe even partially blamed him for losing his most favorite wife, Rachel. So Rachel's gone. Benjamin will never know his mother, and Joseph is just a boy. And so that's another example of all the tension that's going on in this family, which I'm sure it's the anime, he knows all the families of the earth. This is the one that God's working in, so I'm going to throw everything it is at them to try and distract them. This chapter also, why I covered it in the Joseph section, because it lists all the failures of his brothers. So Reuben's moral failure. Reuben will go in to one of Jacob's handmaids, so technically his stepmother, you could call it, and has relations with her, and as a result, Jacob's mad, and this caused Reuben to lose his firstborn inheritance. And then we talk about the 4 oldest sons. Each of them had their issue. Reuben, Simeon, and Levi with the rebellion, and the 4th son, Judah, as a result, becomes to be the one actually who the Lord will work most of his plan through. And these kings that God has prophesied that will come out of Jacob will come through his son, Reuben. All right, and then the chapter summarizes all 12 of his sons now, and then finally the final two verses, let me read of 35, talks about the death of Isaac. And Jacob came unto Isaac his father, and to Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And the days of Isaac were 180 years. So Isaac lived to be 180, which is actually 5 years longer than Abraham lived. And if you do the math, I believe at the time this would make Joseph about 30. So at about the time Joseph was being taken out of prison and presented before Pharaoh and promoted to highest in the land, about his time his grandfather Isaac is dying. And Isaac gave up the ghost and died and was gathered into his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. I want to point to, really there's 4 generations where it seems like the brothers came together. We'll go back to Abraham. Remember, his father was Terah, and we talked about, was Terah initially part of the call? So whatever the case, Abraham and his brother were in Haran, and that's where Terah dies. You kind of think they're Abraham and Haran bury their father Terah. When Abraham dies, talks about Isaac and Ishmael, they come together and bury their father Abraham. And now Jacob has died, and Isaac has died. Jacob and Esau come together and bury him. And then in the last portion of Genesis, when Jacob dies, Joseph and all the brothers come together and bury Jacob. So it's kind of like a generational tradition of the sons coming together and burying their father, you know, like saying, it's like passing the torch to a new generation. Well, this gets us up finally to chapter 36, and this is the end of Esau's story. We hear what happened to him and his descendants, and now for the rest of the Bible, whenever we hear about Esau, it'll be his descendants, the Edomites, and it's usually not good. They're usually kind of a hindrance to the children of Israel, right? First of all, a little about Esau's family. Verses 1 to 8. Now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. And so that, I think it means red from his, you know, his countenance and appearance, and from the stew that he traded his blessing for. Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan, Adah the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. So remember, he initially took 2 wives from the Canaanites, which said caused great trouble to his mother and father. And Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, sister to Nebuchadnezzar. So he also, after that, where it saw that it displeased him, he went to his uncle Ishmael and took one of her daughters to marry. And Adah bare to Esau Eliphaz, and Basemath bare Reuel. A lot of names here. And Aholibamah bare Jeush and Jalem and Korah. These are the sons of Esau, which were born to him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters, and all the persons of his house and his cattle, and all his beasts and all his substance, which he had gotten in the land of Canaan, and went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. For their riches were more than that they might dwell together, and the land wherein they were strangers could not bear them because of their cattle. Thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. So here's some of the 3 wives he chose. He's starting to build a family. And now the Lord, even though he didn't get the birthright of the blessing, seems to be blessing him so much that he's got so much, he has to go in one direction and Jacob has to go into the other direction. So basically what the Lord's saying, these are 2 different nations I'm forming now. Esau's descendants will be the Edomites. Jacob's are going to be the children of Israel. And that's my focus, and that's my plan. So this last part, I want you all to bear with me, because for my sake, like I told you in this study so far, we read every single verse of Revelation. We have read every single verse of Daniel. We read every single verse of the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Took us a year. We went through 6 months of Acts reading every verse. And so far in these 3 series on Genesis, I've read every single verse with the exception here of verse 36, 9 to 43. These are Esau's descendants, so I'm gonna read them too, and I'll make comment here and there, and that way we can say we've read through Genesis as well as we conclude this study. So here's all of Esau's family. And the only place in the Bible a term's gonna be used here, and this is only in the King James Version. I'll tell you when we get to that. And these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, the son of Adah, the wife of Esau. There is another Eliphaz in the Bible. That's one of Job's comforters. Just probably more strongly likely not him, but just saying that is, you got another name there. Reuel, the son of Basemath, the wife of Esau. And the sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. These were the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. So this must be where the Amalekites come from, who the children of Israel will counter all throughout their existence. And these are the sons of Reuel, Nahath, and Zerah, Shema, and Mizah. These were the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. Verse 14. And these were the sons of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, the daughter of Zibeon, Esau's wife, and she bare to Esau Jeush and Jalem and Korah. These were dukes of the sons of Esau. And like I said, we're about to read a lot of the term duke. Like in most Bibles, it will say chiefs. I'm thinking, King James 1611. That was a popular term during that time. The Duke of so and so. You would hear it in English history. So maybe that's why it was translated this way. So verse 15. These were the dukes of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau, Duke Teman, Duke Omar, Duke Zepho, Duke Kenaz. Notice no Bo or Luke Duke in listed here. Duke Korah, Duke Gatam, and Duke Amalek. These are the dukes that came of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were the sons of Edom. And these are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son, Duke Nahath, Duke Zerah, Duke Shammah, Duke Mizah. These are the dukes that come of Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. And these are the sons of Aholibamah, Esau's wife, Duke Jeush, Duke Jalem, Duke Korah. Those were the dukes that came of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Esau, who is Edom, and these are their dukes. These are the sons of Seir, the Horite, who inhabited the land of Lotan, and Shobal, and Zibeon, and Anah. Stop here and take a break. So Moses, according to church history and tradition, wrote these first 5 books. So it's interesting to see they had records of these. He'll later on, write down the children of Israel's descendants, but here he's saying he even has Esau's descendants. So it's just a point to know that they were keeping record of the families back even then. And Dishon and Esar and Dishan. These are the dukes of the Horites, the children of Seir in the land of Edom. And the children of Lotan were Hori and Heman, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. And the children of Shobal were these: Alvan and Menahath and Ebal, Shepho and Onam. And these are the children of Zibeon, both Ajah and Anak. This was that Anak that found the mules in the wilderness, and he fed the asses of Zibeon his father. So there must have been some story circulating around about that, and Moses traces the origin. And the children of Anah were these: Dishon and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah. And these are the children of Dishon: Hamdan and Eshban and Ithram and Chiram. The children of Izar are these: Bilhan and Zaban and Achan. The children of Dishon are these: Uz and Aram. Again, Job was in the land of Uz. Don't know if there's a connection with that or not, but just another Job relation there. And also Jacob has a grandson named Job. These are the dukes that came of the Horites: Duke Lotan, Duke Shobal, Duke Zibeon, Duke Anah, Duke Dishon, Duke Izar, Duke Dishan. These are the dukes who came of Hori among their dukes in the land of Seir. So, all these sentences here. It's closing out Esau's story here, verses 31 to 43. And these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom. Before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. Now God did promise Abraham that kings would come through his loins, so it wasn't just through Isaac, Jacob, and the children of Israel. It was also through other of his descendants. And Bela, the son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. And Bela died, and Jobab, the son of Zerah of Bozrah, reigned in his stead. And Jobab died, and Husham of the land of Temani reigned in his stead. And Husham died, and Hadad, the son of Bedad, who smote Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his stead, and the name of the city was Avith. And Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his stead. And Samlah died, and Saul of Rehoboth by the river reigned in his stead. And Saul died, and Baal-Hanan the son of Akbar reigned in his stead. And Baal-Hanan the son of Akbar died. And Hadar reigned in his stead. And the name of the city was Pa'un. His wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, daughter of Meribah. Almost finished here. And these are the names of the dukes that came from Esau according to their families after their places by their names: Duke Timnah, Duke Alva, Duke Jetha, Duke Aholibamah, Duke Elah, and Pinon, Duke Kenaz, Duke Teman, Duke Mibzar, Duke Magdiel, Duke Iram. These be the dukes of Edom, according to their inhabitants in the land of their possession. He is Esau, the father of the Edomites. So that concludes the entire book of Genesis. Like we said, we've already covered from verse 37 on, but this very next verse begins with the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors and the dream. So just a brief summary. We did the first 11 chapters in December of 2020 and January of 21. That was right after Revelations, and that was the second series we ever did. Last summer, we called it Joseph and his brothers, but it was basically Genesis part 2, the end of the book. We did that June, July, and August. And then finally, the last 3 months, we've done March through May. We've done this middle section, so we've now covered the entire book of Genesis. As we close out, anyone have any comments as we bid farewell to Genesis? Now it's time for the Lord to focus on Israel, and that begins in Exodus.
I think you ought to get a medal for saying all those names.
Yes.
That was a workout. I'm just saying, I hope I
I
don't
always
lose them.
skip it, I'm sorry, but that's just,
When it comes to that part, that's when you fast forward.
Yeah.
But me and my OCD, I said, I've read 49 and a half chapters of Genesis. I got to read this last one here. So.
I just thought it was you that had to read it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
hey, just because I pronounce it, I don't mean it's right. I'm
Yeah,
I'm just giving it my
who's gonna
English.
argue with you?
Yeah. I don't think that was Ula Ba, that was Ula Ah. All right, and what I want to do then is start on Paul's letters. Romans through, what's the last one? Philemon, or Titus, but I'm going to do them chronologically. So, according to the list in the order that he wrote them. So I believe next week we will start with 1 Thessalonians. That's a total of 87 chapters. I'm sure some weeks we'll do more than one chapter a week, but I would say probably for the next year we'll be on Paul's letters. And I mean, that's where most of the church's theology comes from. So we should have some interesting lessons there. So I will close in prayer.
Yeah, and I got another praise report.
Yes.
I forgot about it. Donna, what's that name of the young boy you used to still Walker comes here in Sunday school?
Brandon?
Brandon.
We went to the ceremony for the students Thursday night, after school little program thing, or leading up to it. Well, anyway, they called his name. His name's in the bulletin and getting an award. And
Right.
here he comes across the stage, up there on the stage using his walker, going up there. And he stood up there and everybody clapped their hand. But he excelled and done very good in one of the areas. I guess it's listed in my bulletin at home, but I haven't, I can't remember. But anyway, we all clapped our hands, and when we left and went outside, they were getting in the car, and I went and said something to his mother, and she needs prayer. She's got a very bad cough and cold, and his granddaddy was saying how much the Sunday school here is helping. Coming here with friends, you know, the, kids that he knows, people that he's gotten used to, only the teachers, and it's helped him a
Yeah.
lot, and he thanked the, you know,
That's
the
good, yeah,
church.
I knew he'd said to my brother how his home so much Brandon really
Yeah.
likes it there, so.
Yeah.
That's a good praise report then,
Yeah,
so.
and I told him, I told him to put his window down, I went around there and I told him, I says, I want you to know me and Mr. Charles were really proud of your success, you really done good.
Yeah.
And
He's
he
come a
was-
long way.
He was smiling, holding
Okay.
his
Oh,
picture with a big gold star on
Okay,
it.
well, he was proud of that, I'm sure, so.
Yeah, and
Well,
that wasn't easy, Kevin.
No, it wasn't,
Him
he's,
going up 2 stairs.
yeah, he's had a lot, he's been through a lot.
This is
At
hard.
that stage, there was like 2 stair steps, he had to go up with that walker to get up there and all.
Well, I think young people like that, you know, today is a generation of snowflakes, but he's no snowflake, he's had a lot to go through, the poor boy. All right, well, let's close on that high note. The Lord, we thank you for this praise report of Brandon, and thank you for the lesson today and the studying of the where it all began, the book of Genesis, and we know that you had a plan of salvation from the beginning. Bless the remainder of the services today, in Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, guys.
And hopefully, this will be his first summer. The last 3 summers, he's been a full cast. The last 3 summers.